everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, February 27th, 2024, and this is your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. I am Jer Stays, and on the other end of the line is none other than Nostradamus himself, Fletcher Sharpe. How are you, sir?
I'm sad that the weekend's over, but this week's supposed to be like 50, 60, I think the highest temperature is 67, so like maybe spring is coming a little early.
It sure feels like it, man. Like, I don't even know where winter hit. I've got this feeling we're going to get walloped like one more time or like at the weirdest time possible. But I really am feeling those spring vibes, and it scares the heck out of me.
I mean, the thing that scares me a little bit more is if it's going to be this warm now, it's probably going to feel like the back of Satan's tongue come summer. But, you know, we'll enjoy it now until we get to that point.
That is a metaphor I never thought I would ever think about in my life. Thank you very much, Fletcher Sharpe. Man, all right, I'm going to start with something fun before we get into a little bit of sports stuff. I was on Instagram, of course, and sir, you're everywhere on the east side, and I couldn't help but see one of the most absurd things, most of the Detroit absurd, like, book of absurdity things in a long time. A dabbing panda, a restaurant with a dabbing Asian panda on the sign. What in the Sam hell are you doing?
I'm not going to give away exactly where I live because I don't want people finding me. But there's a gas station that is by my house that used to have this place called Burger Time, and I loved Burger Time. I'm not like a big gas station food guy, but I loved Burger Time. They had this Doritos Cool Ranch burger, and it really was just like a regular like bacon cheeseburger with like a few Doritos. But like the fact that they did it and did it well enough to where I'm like, this is delicious. But apparently the food was not good enough because I didn't even realize that it had gone away. Like I went to go get gas. I'm like, maybe one day I'll get a Burger Time burger. But apparently at that point it had been gone for like a few weeks. So I looked up and was like, dang. Went inside, told my partner, I was like, hey, Burger Time's gone. And she's like, the food sucks. And then she's like, well, what's in its place? And I was like, this thing called El Loco Panda.
What?
And I was like, all right, yeah, that's what it's called. And she was like, send me a picture. So I sent a picture of the banner and walked away. And she was like, oh my God. And I was like, what? She's like, is that a dabbing panda? And I was like, what are you talking about? And I looked at the picture and zoomed in, and lo and behold, there is a panda holding a taco, a sombrero, and he's hitting the dab like prime Cam Newton. With the hat, he looks like what Cam Newton would be dressed like. And I was just confused. And I looked at their menu, and they have burgers, they have tacos, they have a lot of Mexican food, they have a lot of, burger style food, they have shawarmas.
Okay, but they have anything on the menu that is Asian because last I checked, pandas do not hail from Mexico.
I guess if you want to be super technical, you could try to claim shawarma, but like I'm not doing that. But no, not an egg roll, not any soup. I'm confused. The last time I heard of a panda referencing anything that was more Latin culture than anything else was Pablo Sandoval of the San Francisco Giants. And that's because they called him Kung Fu Panda. Outside of that, I was confused and a little bit annoyed, but also a little bit intrigued. Where I was like, you know what? I'm going to come back here later. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but one day in the future, I'll be stopping in here. And then I told Nicole that, and she was like, I know you. Order one thing. Do not come back with 7 different things. Order one thing and then try it later.
If you want 7 things, I will meet up with you and we will do this together. So I take it you haven't gone in yet. And I also want to send it to our listeners. Is there something about pandas and tacos that we're missing that I just am not familiar with, but this seems completely and totally absurd?
I like pandas. They're my favorite animal. I like tacos. It's like top 3 favorite food for me. But like, it's not something I was like, ooh, let's put them together. Because that doesn't really make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Maybe the owners, it makes sense to them. And again, I'm going to withhold judgment until I actually get to eat the food. Because, you've seen places that are like, this looks like it's going to be terrible. I mean, my favorite taco spot looks like a set from the early series of Saw when you walk by. It's like,
Okay, what is that spot?
I'm not telling people because
Wait,
I don't.
What? Come on. This is Daily
Nope. Detroit.
Detroit.
I know, and this is a daily Fletcher. It's staying in my back pocket. But the first time I went there, I looked up and saw it and was like, oh, man, we're going to die. And then you step inside and it's like, actually, this food is delicious. This is the best. So like, yeah, I mean, looks can be deceiving. So I will withhold judgment on a local panda until I have food. And if they got shawarma and tacos and it's really hard to mess that up. So I'm gonna be positive and assume that it's gonna be great. At least great for me. I can't speak for everybody else. Again, I thought Burger Time was great, and they disappeared like a thief in the night. So I don't know.
Now, dailydetroit@gmail.com. If you've got guesses as to where Fletcher's favorite spot is, if a listener writes in and guesses it right, will you acknowledge it?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
But I will add the caveat: if the listener is someone who knows me personally, I will discard it immediately.
Okay. So it's got to be somebody who's like not your friend.
Yes.
Okay.
And don't start telling people either. That's not fair.
All right. Now this is the game. What is Fletcher's favorite taco spot? Do you have any clues that you want to give people?
It's in Southwest, but it's also not in Southwest.
So it's within the borders of the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the clue. The clue is it's within the borders of the city of Detroit, and it is west of Woodward. I think that's a good clue. All right. I want to hear it. dailydetroit@gmail.com or 313-789-3211. And Fletcher, like, let's coordinate offline. Either you go or we'll go together. Let's try some absurd panda food on the east side of Detroit, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely.
All right, let's get into a little bit of sports. Man, I think we got to pay more attention to the Red Wings. I feel like I have shirked my responsibility, but I will be honest with you. The Red Wings have been harder for me to follow since the strike, and that's just in general. I used to be a big hockey fan. I remember going out to the championship parades. Like, I was into it. And then somewhere along the line, I kind of fell off the wagon. A lot of Detroit fans are very frustrated because it's been many years since we've been in the playoffs. But their real thing this year, man, kind of like snuck up.
Yeah, I'm more of a Winnipeg Jets fan, and that's really because...
Huh? Okay. Back up.
I'm going to explain. Why.
Okay.
They used to be the Atlanta Thrashers, and they hold the record for most African-American players on the ice at one time, most African-American players on a roster, and they got Lil Jon to come to a game and like get hype for the crowd. And I was like, you know what? The Thrashers are terrible. Not even like they are awful. Like I think they brought Anton Carter, like he's about to retire. They're like, no, come sign with us. I think they did it mainly just to get some faces that you would recognize on the ice. But like, I appreciate teams that are like, we want to get people who look like you so you understand what's happening. And Atlanta tried to embrace the Thrashers. Obviously, they're the Winnipeg Jets, the reborn Winnipeg Jets, so obviously it did not work out well. But I'll forever appreciate the organization for trying to do that.
I just assumed that you had family members in Manitoba or something, because Cheyenne's an Avalanche fan, but that's because she was born in Denver.
Yeah, no, there is no connection to me and Winnipeg. I will never be going to Winnipeg.
Oh, come on, you would go. Okay. If we did a trip to Winnipeg, would you go?
It's far.
I know, but once you're on a plane, it doesn't matter.
It's a far plane ride. I know, like, it's still shorter than, like, say, if we were going in, like, the Oregon Trail at time, but, like, it's still far, so I don't know.
I'm curious now. I'm looking up if there are any games up ahead for the Jets and the Red Wings on the schedule. I know we played them in December.
If there's a home game, maybe, but Fletcher and Winnipeg is not a thing. I noticed recently they beat Columbus 6-1, and I was like, okay, pretty good win for the Red Wings. And then I know more recently they beat Chicago 3-2 with DeBrincat and Kane coming back to score against their former team. And I was like, all right, well, they seem to be doing pretty well. Check the standings, and I'm like, they're the number one wild card in the East. Like, they're going to get back to the playoffs. And all season, like, they've had a really great offense. They've won a lot of games by scoring a lot of goals. But, like, there's maybe only a handful of games they've won where they haven't scored 3 or more goals. I know for sure for a while it was 4 or more. Like, if they score less than 4 goals, they're not winning. And that was at least for, like, the first 30 games, which is insane to think about. Because you don't think of hockey as, like, a game where you're scoring 5, 6, 7, 8 goals consistently. But that was the Red Wings. It's like, if we don't score 4 goals, we lose. And it was really just down to defense. And I won't say shoddy goalkeeping, but maybe not the best goalkeeping at the time. They've kind of turned it around. Defense has kind of stepped up a little bit. Not that much. Offense has kind of taken a step back, but it doesn't really matter if you're getting wins. DeBrincat has come in and been exactly who you expected him to be. He's a point getter. Patrick Kane, who I'm not really a fan of Blackhawks players, period, but he's come in. He's made people forget a little bit that he played for Chicago, and we share the same jersey number, so I'm willing to be forgiving. I won't say they're the most exciting team on ice, but given where the Red Wings have been and now where they are now, there is some excitement back in Hockey Town. You got people actually claiming Detroit again is Hockey Town outside of the Motor City.
I think that's something that's important for us because, look, hockey is still kind of, depending who you ask, it's kind of the fourth sport. but hockey where it is loved is truly loved. And I remember the vibes of Hockey Town before, and if we can get some of that back, that is an excellent thing. The other thing that's coming up is that we've still got the trade deadline ahead, so there could still be a couple of moves made.
Yeah, of course. If they really think they have a chance to get to a final, maybe potentially win a Stanley Cup, you might see some players who are a little bit younger, some potential shipped out to get some people who are more understanding of what's happening now. Who knows? They might try to keep their younger core and just go with that. I would love to see that. I'm always for teams developing. If you've been listening to this show, you know exactly how I feel about young teams developing into, dynasty-like teams. So hopefully they do the right things. They keep their younger players, and maybe they don't win the Stanley Cup this year. Maybe they don't even get to the final this year. But if they make the playoffs, that's a start. That you have a young core, you have a few veterans who are there to help make the playoffs, you can build from there. It's been some time since they've had a real shot at being in the playoffs and potentially making some noise.
And what's great about that, especially with hockey being that it's a series, we're going to see some home playoff action in Detroit, which is going to be great for the city.
Oh, for sure. I remember when I was younger, every hockey season near the end, it's the Red Wings are going to the playoffs. Red Wings are going to the playoffs. Red Wings are going to they're going to go far. They're going to do whatever. The expectation was always Stanley Cup, Stanley Cup, Stanley Cup. And then you kind of just expected it. And then the first year they didn't go, everyone was kind of like, what do we do now? And ever since, it's just been oh, they're definitely not going to the playoffs. So for them to even ignite a little bit of a spark, kind of like the Lions, just ignite a little bit of a spark under this storied franchise, that's good to see. Before, I used to get a little annoyed when you go somewhere and there's 30 wing jerseys everywhere and it's 35 people. Then it got down to where there's 35 people, you maybe see one. Now it's up to the regular, half the crowd's wearing wing jerseys. I like to see that now. It's good to see all the teams trying to do something and, half of them actually doing something well.
You mentioned the Lions. I cannot believe it, but we re-signed Michael Badgley for a 1-year contract. I cannot believe it. I literally just was no, covering my eyes. Why did we do this?
Two things. One, maybe they're going to try to show some more faith in him going forward. Two, signing him now doesn't really mean that much, because come training camp, if they happen to get some young, untested rookie who's looking to make a team, or if some veteran happens to leave their team, they bring him in for a training camp, Michael Badgley could lose in a competition, and then they're going to release him, and then it doesn't matter. So any signing that happens now, unless it's a big 6-year, $140 million contract, it's really nothing much. We'll see come end of preseason, he's still on the roster. When that happens, we'll cross that bridge then. But for right now, maybe they're trying to show that they're committed to maybe giving him a shot. Maybe he's worked on kicking from more than 45 yards out to where he's instilled some confidence that maybe they can trust him to kick a field goal from that far out.
We're in the offseason, of course, but fans can't stop talking about who we might bring in, what we can do. The cap has been expanded in the NFL this year. And you and I were sending some messages offline before the start of the show. And you reminded me that I maybe shouldn't get so excited about extra cap space because, it's not exactly that easy.
It really isn't. People want their favorite teams to sign all the top free agents and all the top whatever. And you hear it through the season, we need to get this player is going to be out of a contract. This player's out of a contract. Let's go get him. Let's go get him. But they also want you to keep all of their stars that are already there. It's this guy wants a $70 million contract. Give it to him, but also sign those other. And money's this isn't Madden or FIFA or 2K or whatever game you play. There are real constraints that don't allow that to happen. And you see teams win the championship and then they bring back most of their core but don't bring in anyone else, or they get rid of half their core and bring in some new people to fill in gaps. You can't just go out there and get the stars and not expect to give anything up. That's the one thing I will say, for just please keep that rational thought in mind, that more money for the cap space is great, but it also means maybe some players on your roster who deserve it a bit more might get it. So maybe you're not going to get, Sauce Gardner type free agent. Maybe you might get secondary cornerback free agent. Maybe you might get defensive line pass rusher who's maybe not Montez Sweet, but maybe he's someone someone competent. That's really what the draft is for, in my opinion. When you have a set roster, a really set team, you build through the draft. And again, they've done a great job so far. I'm more interested in seeing who they bring in through the draft than I am through free agency.
All right. Fletcher Sharpe, Taco Panda for next week?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I might actually stop there tomorrow, so I don't know.
Always so good to talk to you, man. Saint FDW on all the socials. I am Jer Stays. As always, leave us 5 stars on your favorite podcast app. Love some of the reviews that we've been getting. We are supported by our members on Patreon, patreon.com/dailydetroit. And feedback, as always, dailydetroit@gmail.com. We're really working on fleshing out our sports and other programming for the rest of 2024. So, send us a note, dailydetroit@gmail.com. All right, remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.